Hello everyone. So in our last section, we saw a quick introduction to method overloading. We defined method overloading as an ability or polymorphism in object-oriented programming that allows a class to accept more than one method with the same name. So that's what overloading is. So let's see how we can do that with Python. So now we can actually supply a function with a default value in a list. This will allow us to overload it. So let's go and see that example. So let's just say creating a class as example. So I'm just going to call that class testing because we're going to be testing out that method. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create a method with default values. So I'm going to call that method first method, and I'll passing self, and I'll pass in value, and I'll call that value hello. So let's create another parameter. So I'll call that value 2, and I'll call that champ. So the next thing we're going to do is just to print out value and value 2. So I'm going to print out value and value, value 2, just like that. So the next thing we'll do is to create the class object. So let's say create the class object, and I'm just going to say obj underscore 1, which will represent our first object, and I'll call it testing, and we'll run that to testing. So now, let's call the method, the class method, without any parameters. So it's simply going to be obj underscore 1 dot, we called it first method. So if we call it, without passing any values, we're going to get hello champ. So what we're going to do now is to change the class method. So let's call it with other values, with other parameters. So let's just say calling the method with new parameters. All right, so what we're going to do is to say obj underscore 1 dot first method, but this time around we're just going to change those two values. So I'm going to create two strings, and I'm going to change them to hello there. I'm going to say super champ. So now we have that value. So hello there, super champ. So we have the first method, which is empty, which is a default method that will take automatically the parameters we passed when we created the class. And now we have another method that is going to change this value. So we're actually overloading this method. Now we can also create a method with varying and different arguments. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that. So I'll just create a comment, and I'll just say creating a method with different arguments. So let's make sure we turn that into a markdown cell. And basically to do that, we use the none statement. So let's say we use the Python none statement to set values. So basically when we use none, Python is going to see it as we want to set an empty value in our program. So let's go ahead and create a class called testing2 because we already have testing1 above, and I'll say def, and I'll create a second method. So within this second method, let's go ahead and create our parameters. So we'll take the default parameter, and let's just say value equals none. Let's create another value and call that value 2 equals none, and create another value 3 equals none. So we have 3 parameters, and we've set these 3 parameters to none. So let's test to see if these 3 parameters have values. So test if all three parameters have values. And the way to do that, we will use logic and flow control statements. So let me just go ahead and add it here. Now to do that, we use flow control statements. That means we'll use if else, elif statements just to find out if this value is true. So now the first thing I'm going to say, if value is not equal to none and value 2 is not equal to none, and we'll do that for the third value, value 3 is also not equal to none, what we're going to do right now is to print out and say we're calling all three parameters. And also what we want to do is to print out the three values. So I'm just going to print out value 2, and also print out, say value 3. Right. So now that we have that, what we're going to do next is to test for just 2 parameters. So test for 2 parameters. Now all we need to do is to find out just for the first and the second value. So we're going to say elif. So I'm going to say value is not equal to none and value 2 is also not equal to none. So we're going to print out and say we're calling 2 parameters, and we're also going to print out, let me just go ahead and make this a bit big, and then we're going to print out value and value 2. So finally, we have the third elif statement, elif, and this time around, we're going to check out just value when value is not equal to none, just for a single value, and we're just going to print out single parameter running, and we're also going to print just a value. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and create an object of this class. So the first thing we're going to do is to create the instance. So let's just say obj underscore 2, and this is going to be equal to testing 2. So once we have testing 2, whoops, it says testing is not defined, so let's go ahead and run this. And now we have an issue on line 11. So let's see why we have that issue. So the not equal to should be together. All right, it should be together. Sorry about that, guys. I put the space. So now what we want to do is to call the second method. So let's go ahead and call second method since we've created the instances of second method. So now let's create an instance. So now I'm just going to say obj underscore 2 dot, the name of the method is second method, and let's pass in 3 parameters. So I'm going to say u, comma, r, then comma, then awesome. So if we run that, so we get calling all 3 parameters and we get the result, you are awesome. So we are calling all 3 parameters with this method with the same name. So let's go ahead and see if we can call 2 parameters. So let's just go and say obj underscore 2 dot second method, and let's just pass in two values. So I'm going to say keep and second argument coding. So if you go ahead and run that, it tells us we are running just 2 parameters by saying calling 2 parameters, and we get the result saying keep coding. And finally, we're going to test out the third one. So let's just go ahead and say obj underscore 2 dot second method, and we're just going to say solo, because this code is solo. So here we have it. So we're calling this same method, the same name, but we're calling it in 3 different ways. So we're actually overloading this function. So in the second part, we'll look at 2 more ways we can overload methods using Python. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.